Thank you very much. Welcome to another edition of Globespan 24/7. I'm your host, Vishnu Bisram. Tonight we will be discussing an assessment or reassessment, if you will, of the government's 1 year in office that was concluded about a week ago or so ago. Tonight we have three very distinguished guests from three different political parties, the so-called minor parties or small parties. With us is the leader of the LJP, Mr. The Deputy Speaker, Mr. Shuman, and then we have Mr. Bandhu, and we have Mr. Senior Counsel, Mr. Timothy Jonas. Gentlemen, welcome to another issue edition of Globespan 24/7. I don't think you all need any more introduction, having been in this program so many times, and people are very fond of having you on the program. As I discovered in my encounters and conversations with many of them here in New York as well as in Guyana, as Tim would, as not Tim, but as Bandhu and the Deputy Speaker would have known. I was in Guyana. I just returned back to New York this morning. So welcome again, gentlemen. Let's begin with an introduction. First, Mr. Jonas, you being the Deputy Speaker, would you give us an assessment of what you think is the performance of the government so far in its first year in office?
I'm sorry, Vishnu, is that directed at me?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Shuman, sorry.
Well, good evening, gentlemen. Vishnu, I kind of misunderstood you there. You called Tim Jones and then Deputy Speaker. I wasn't sure who you wanted to answer.
Yeah, I aired my apology.
I think you're asking a question that I think will take an hour and a half to answer.
So let's summarize this.
So I don't want to venture into answering that question in its entirety. But I would take a gander at it and say that in our December evaluation, at least when we were on this very same program, speaking about the government's performance up until that point, I think I had given them a B+. And that scale has not really moved very far from that. It's still hovering in the B+ area. And I think the reasons for that will be interrogated and discussed through the show as we move on.
Okay, so you're assigning them a grade now, and later on you will explain your grade as a good professor would. Yes. Mr. Bandhu of the United Republican Party.
Well, I will give them a C+. I will give them a B+, and if you want me to start explaining, or later we can do that too. Yeah.
And so you don't want to venture right now?
Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. I would like to tell you some of the things that I'm observing and what has been happening around the country. I have been traveling across Guyana, and if you go from east to west and from north to south in Guyana, everyone has been crying out how things are bad in Guyana. They're not getting to eat, they're not getting job, things have been becoming impossible for them to make their livelihood. I just came from Essecubo. Let me tell you something about Essecubo. In Essecubo, like many of these town council, like they doesn't seem to know what they're doing. Let me state one case. In Anna Regina, one of our members, his name is Harish Singh. He has acquired a piece of property there, and the town council had given him an approval to get his building built. He never had a business there. Now he applied for electricity, and then the electricity people asked him to get a no objection letter from the councillor. I personally went with him to the mayor, and the mayor said to write a little letter and give him the entering to the meeting at the set time. He went back the next day. They told him he owe GRA taxes. He never had a business on this site, but he still owed taxes, you know, to the government.
So you think it's a case of competence that the town council doesn't know what it is doing in general, and you cite that specific case to illustrate that point. Let's say, any other issue on that particular point?
Pardon me?
Any other information or comment on that?
Now they're telling me he has to pay $100,000 transfer tax. They doesn't own the property. The Lands and Survey own the property. How he'd pay $100,000 transfer tax? There's a next issue in Burvist, Corriverton. In Corriverton, they have a place called what's the place name? Anyway, they have a garbage dump there. The people call us to see if we can assist them because the government has not been doing anything. They have a garbage dump. They dump all kind of rotten meats, everything in there. The garbage dump, the people's house is just next to the garbage dump. Just a fence separate them. The canyon crow go there, they pick up all the nasty meat, go on the people's zinc tap, eat it, leave all the bones and things like that there, you know. And these are people that who every house in that area had voted for this government. And this government neglected these people. So we had asked them to do a petition. They get 200 signatures, send it to the WIM EPA, and let's see what's happening. This is real disgusting. People are getting sick there. That's a next serious health issue we will be attempting in this country. You know, it is very, very serious. Right? All go across this country. We talk from the COVID when the government took in. From the COVID, they said they're giving every home $25,000. At least my home never received a $25,000.
So you have not received $25,000?
No, I have not. And many people did not receive also, right? The first person they give us Granger and make a big publicity on that. Granger received $25,000. You know, and this is what happened. We would like to have call on the government to do an audit on all these sections of money they have been giving out. We want to know because Sunday gone I had meetings with some lawyers and so in quarantine. And one of them was telling me they have two friends. One of them have for this damaged crops and so what they're giving money for. Agriculture.
Flood relief grants, yes.
Flood relief and so on. One of them said they're planting rice and they get $1.something million. The other one is planting rice, but did not plant rice and have a little bigger acreage. He gets $6.something million. And this is what we are facing in Guyana. Flood relief, we don't know where the money is going to because this government only seeks the PPP people to go and distribute things all over this country. And they are telling people too that this is not government, this is PPP.
But the government is distributing the money. It so happens the government is PPP. So
Well, I am telling you what they're telling people.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Let's hear from Timothy Jonas, and then we'll come back and put everything in context. Timothy Jonas is chairperson of ANUC, a new and united Guyana. He is has a regular presence, or should I say, quite often presence on this program. So, Timothy, what would be your assessment of the government's first years in office? So far, we have been giving out grades. Bandhu gave a C. Mr. Shuman gave a B. What would be your grade if you were to assign a grade as a professor? We are not hearing. We are not hearing you.
I don't like to go that road because it's a bit vague. B, C, D. I'm not going to do that. I think we got to be careful to identify what the role of the government is, what the needs of the country were, and how well the government has met the needs of the country. We have to separate policy decisions, so policies which are decided upon, and then how those policies are implemented. The first example that comes to mind for me is the COVID fight. I think that the steps that the government took when COVID threatened and when COVID evolved, and when we learned about international vaccines, I think that what the government did was very good. I give them high grades for that. They were decisive. They immediately took steps to mandate lockdowns. They immediately took steps to mandate masking when you're in public to prevent the spread of the disease. As soon as the vaccines were available, and we know in the third world you're the last to get, they took steps to get the vaccines and to try to encourage people to take the vaccines. Now, those as policy decisions were very good, decisive, and they were the right things to do. But how they were implemented left something to be desired. For example, I've already spoken about the method of buying the vaccines from this Arabian sheikh. If you are bypassing procedures which exist for transparency in terms of public expenditure, sound leadership requires you to be transparent, to disclose everything to the public, everything to the opposition, show the contract, explain what was done, what money was spent. That didn't happen. If you wanted to implement your decisions for the whole country, common sense would tell you that if the opposition represents half of the country voted for them, then before you start making a noise, you should meet with the opposition and you should explain ahead of time, this is what we want to do. Do you agree and will you help? If that inclusive approach had been taken in the implementation of what was a good policy, we might not know we're stuck in this situation where so many people in Linden are opposing the vaccination. The nurses at the Linden Hospital are quarreling about it. The teachers' union is opposing. Nearly half of the country is expressing suspicion and doubt about the vaccination program. What needed to be done was that the opposition party that represents those people should have been brought on board, should have been encouraged to give their voice, to lend their suggestions so that a cohesive plan of implementation could have been put on board, so that we don't have the situation now where, although the leaders of the opposition have been vaccinated, their supporters are running around not knowing what to do, but suspicious and distrustful of the PPP government. So I give them good marks for the decisive fight against COVID, but how they implemented it was self-serving and not inclusive. So the implementation needs to be considered in contradistinction to the policy itself.
Okay, so let's stick to COVID. Mr. Bandhu, you agree with that?
Well, I don't think Timothy was there when the health minister had called a meeting at Convention Center with all the political parties and asking them to cooperate, you know, with them, because this is a national issue, right? And we all should work.
Yeah, we are not hearing you. Devin, Mr. Bandhu's video has frozen. Should we
While we waiting for Vishnu to come back on, I was aware and was informed when that invitation was sent out. But that invitation wasn't sent out to a major opposition party representing half the people as if to an equal, to say this is what we want to do, lend your suggestions and let us work together to do it. It was sent out to many small to say this is what we're doing and you gotta come and help. And there's a difference in tone. If you are interfacing with a party that got nearly as many votes as you, there is a means to do it. If you want truly to be inclusive, there's a means to do it. And that's what I'm getting at. So I was aware. Sorry, Vishnu, not back on yet, because I would like to him to be on board to hear what I'm saying. I was aware when Dr. Anthony sent that out, but he sent that out after he started getting opposition. He sent it out after there were murmurs. And my point is that when you decide to take a policy, to implement a policy, it is important in Guyana to say to the other side, please come and let us have a talk. Just the two of us. We're not talking to private sector commission and chamber of commerce and all of these different interests as if you are a minion like them. We're having a conversation, the two parties that represent 99% of the country. Do you agree? What suggestions do you have? Can you help us? And in what way can you help? Let us move forward together to do it. If that had been done, you would have had the Sherwood Duncans, who we know can be vitriolic and poisonous. They may have been incorporated to be part of it and encourage the people in Linden, encourage the nurses, encourage the teachers to come on board with it. But right now we have division, and the division continues. So I'll give high marks for the policy. In terms of implementation, then more needed to be done. That's only one example. I think the issue with gas and oil, the centralization of power, the unwillingness to decentralize and allow the business community. We need clear policies and we need to see how it is done. But I don't want to. I hope when Vishnu comes back, I don't want to take advantage and monopolize, and there may be another pointer that is out there.
Okay, let's hear from the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Shuman, leader of the LJP.
Thank you, Tim and Vishnu. I'd like to support Tim. Well, it's kind of interesting because I support Tim and Vishnu on both of those, but I think the sensitivity of the time, I think we had just, when Dr. Anthony had presented the opportunity for all of us to meet, it was not too long after the tabling of the EU report. I think there are still some election scars there. And the fact that the leader of the opposition was unwilling to participate, and there's still this, what I'd say, this cat and mouse game that's being played between the president and the leader of the opposition. I will not recognize you until you recognize me and all that stuff. I think it has hindered the COVID process. It has hindered any kind of progress that we could have made collectively, and that is where Tim's remarks ring true. At the end of the day, we have to recognize that Mr. Harman is the leader of the opposition. Whether I like it or not, I, as a member of the opposition, he leads the opposition side of Parliament. And that opposition side of Parliament comes with a great degree of responsibility. It comes with a great following, if I were to put it that way. A tremendous amount of people voted for that political party. And it would have been prudent to engage the leader of the opposition directly. But once again, the cat and mouse, hinder that process. I think when we ended up with the COVID, or at the COVID briefing, I think components of it was trying to seek and solicit support from all of the smaller parties, and it's unfortunate that APNU was placed in that block. For all of the smaller parties to be able to reach out to our base and encourage them to be vaccinated. I don't know that we walked out of there with a very clear path on what the government's plans were. I know that they wanted to get as many people vaccinated. So the management of COVID in itself, the decisiveness of the government, I quite aptly agree with Tim in terms of how it marks in their favor. And the implementation most definitely needed a bit more to be desired. Take, for example, right now we're talking about schools reopening and encouraging parents and teachers to be vaccinated, public servants. But in many indigenous communities, there are still issues in terms of how do I, as someone whose religion says that I should not participate in anything external going into my body, I can't even take blood. How now do I subscribe to a vaccination program that stands completely opposite to my religious belief? That's one. The second thing is information is not readily and widely available in those communities, so it creates a very unique problem in those communities. You talk about requiring that if you're not vaccinated, you have to have a PCR test, but yet planes don't go into every community every single day. So how now do you address that issue? Some time ago, I posted on Facebook, and it came with a lot of flack, but I make no apologies for it, that the government should only provide 19,000 house lots to people who are vaccinated. The issue with that statement, it is not necessarily the 19,000 and the house lot, which unfortunately is what people saw. And a component of it was only for vaccination. But it is meant to identify the absence of information in indigenous communities, the difficulty that exists for these communities to participate in any such program. When you're going to go into communities and talk about, teachers have to be vaccinated, well, if someone has an adverse effect to the vaccine, we don't have a program that says, okay, well, we can bring them out immediately and get that addressed. We don't have the critical care in those communities. I mean, for some people to give birth in itself creates a problem in those communities, and that should not be something excessively complicated. Now imagine dealing with a person rejecting this new medication, and now how do you address that? And remember, all it takes is one case in these communities whereby one person gets sick and no one wants to take it anymore. So there are some fundamental issues with that. And I'm no lawyer, and I'm sure Tim will correct me on this if I fail, but I think the Constitution also speaks about non-discrimination. We have a right to live in a society that is free from discrimination. So when you're going to tell teachers that they cannot go into these buildings, or you can't go to work unless you're vaccinated, in my view, that is discriminatory. And what is happening in the public service sector right now, in my view also, is discriminatory. The vaccine, based on science that is out there, it does not protect the person that does not take it. It protects the person that takes it. So by me taking it, it doesn't protect you, Vishnu, or you, Tim, or you, viewer. It protects me. So I should have the responsibility for my own life. I guess to that extent, we're dealing with something so new. To say whether or not, I think that is where my choice comes in. While I will urge everyone to go out and be vaccinated, I will continue to advocate for that. But we cannot go and vaccinate an entire nation at the expense of violating their fundamental rights.
Tim, your response? Since Dr. Bandhu is not around.
You're muted.
General thrust of what Lenox is saying, I agree with, that we need to encourage people to be vaccinated. I'm a supporter of it. I was one of the first vaccinated. My family, the adults, are vaccinated. As soon as the children can be, they will be vaccinated. And I think that we need to encourage people to be vaccinated. I strongly disagree with forcing people to be vaccinated, whether you do it directly or indirectly. And this escapade with the police going in to remove people from the Ministry of Finance, that is forcing people. Now, Maya Motley in Barbados was very clear the other day that her government is not about forcing people to do things. And Lennox's point is well made, that the vaccine protects you. And therefore, when you're vaccinated, you're protected. And there can be steps taken short of forcing people to put something in their body they do not want to put. You need to encourage them, but not force them. I'm not going to go down the road of the constitutionality of it. It's actually quite a complicated question because there are exceptions in the Constitution about public health. I personally don't think this falls within an exception, but it's not an easy discussion. So let's leave that alone for now. I think we can just rely on first principles of morality. You do not force someone to do something unless they are a danger to you. And I believe unvaccinated people are a danger to themselves, not. So I agree generally with what Lenox said. I think another important area that needs government and less than average implementation, the handouts that were just raised, about the $19,000 handouts and the other handouts. Again, as gas and oil brings revenue to the country and the government has more money to spend, a serious question arises as to how to get that money to all for the benefit of the citizens. The money doesn't help just sitting on, and we need to find a way for the citizens to benefit more so because we are desperately poor as a country and people are still living in abject poverty in Guyana as a result of 50 years of poor leadership. So we need to find immediate ways to elevate our poor and our abject from their poverty, but on a sustainable way. What the government has done is on 4 different occasions, the government has decided to give handouts. I am a full support of a firm and transparent policy to get money into the hands of Guyanese who need it. If Guyana is earning revenue from gas and oil, and Guyana as a country can afford it, that money must go to help one way. In a short term, it must go by putting money in their hands, because they're in the medium and long term, it must go to fixing infrastructure, creating jobs, encouraging foreign investment so that there is employment. However, so again, the policy of a welfare system is one that I support, I encourage, and I give the government credit for it. Again, in the implementation, there has been a lot to be desired. In our consolidated fund, we have money, the country has money that goes in by people paying taxes, goes in from revenue, from royalties, from places like ExxonMobil and other foreign investors, timber and all of that. There are safeguards for how that money is spent. You go to Parliament, it scares me to think that you can take money out in white envelopes, billions of dollars, and go handing it out at random. I am yet to see the safeguards that ensure that that money was properly sent and applied to the people who should have received it. I've heard stories, you always hear stories in Guyana. A person will sign saying that he received the 19, but really received 15. A person will sign saying he received 20 in order to collect 15, a kickback. Or someone will sign just so that that money can be accounted for, although it's not spent. Now, the first time this happened, maybe there was a desperate need. But when the government took money out of the consolidated fund, and again, we have not seen the accountability, in their wisdom, they went and did it again. And then they did it a third time. And now they're doing it a fourth time in the agriculture sector. There is no way possible you can account for the billions of dollars that just going out like that. No one knows how it's going. No one knows how it's coming back. And Guyana is one of the most corrupt countries in the Western Hemisphere. If you speak to supporters of the opposition, and that represents nearly half of the country, they will tell you God would have to come down to tell them that there has not been corruption in the process. We need a system of transparency where, as a matter of law, as a matter of parliamentary intervention, as a matter of systems, the wife knows that she is entitled to go to the post office or to go to NIS or to go to the bank to collect a certain amount of money every quarter for each of her school-age children. And she goes and she presents her ID and she shows the children school certificate and she signs and she collects it as a system, not for a photo opportunity for a minister going to put an envelope in. An old age pensioner needs to know that as a system, he can go every month to the post office or the bank, or he signs for it and gets it by wire transfer to his bank account. Not because the government says, out of our largesse, we choose to do this, but because it is his right to take part in the revenue that is going to come into the country. That is what the system must be. And then we expand that so that we start providing meals in school. We start providing sports facilities in school. We need to expand it in a systemic situation where the government can put its hand in a consolidation, transfer it into cash, put it into envelopes, and pretend it all is well. That is not how you run a country. So I want to give the government for taking the decision that our newfound revenue must devolve to the people for their direct benefit because there is a direct need, but not this way. Not this way. It must be done systemically, transparently, and I hope that we hear from the Auditor General soon. He showed courage during the last administration. I don't know if he will show the similar courage now. I hope so. So how the access to the consolidated fund was done, whether it was done through parliamentary intervention, and where the accountability. But kudos for the welfare approach. Let's fix the implementation. On another side, we're talking about inclusivity. When the government decided that it was a good idea to give cash handouts, it needed to call the largest opposition party in beforehand, say this is what we propose to do. Do you agree with it? Will you call? You don't see one side going around for the photo opportunities. You see both sides going into their areas to say we support this move. This is what is being. The entire country is represented. The entire country is happy. Have exclusion. We have to have inclusion.
But Tim, on the issue of inclusion, I recall government did make some efforts to invite the opposition to come to the table. Granger was invited, for example, for an exchange with former presidents. He didn't show up. I believe Joe Harmon was also invited for some meeting. He also didn't show up. So there were efforts made to include the opposition leader, but the opposition leader simply resist, as the deputy speaker himself had noted.
Well, give me the details, Vishnu, because there are ways to do things. And as Lenox himself said, it's one thing to say, to treat the large opposition party as if it's a minion like small parties and private sector commission and say, all y'all come to this meeting. We, the great government, are going to be speaking to you, or going to the leader as an equal to say, this is what we want to do. No media, no cameras, no loud noise. This is what we're thinking of. Are you on board? And I don't believe that was done.
And you believe if they do that, the opposition will respond?
Vishnu, I believe if you do that, you have justified your position as government, and you have satisfied your own conscience, and you have vindicated your position as a leader of the whole country. Whether the opposition says yea or nay, you, by reaching out genuinely, by saying, look, can you help us out in these areas? We know you have reach in those areas. Can we give you the money and ask you to deal with it, account to us, be involved in the system in a real way? If you do that, I don't see anyone turning you down. But if you do it for the media, for the glitz, you're not going to get an honest response because your offer is not honest.
If I may pick up on that there, Vishnu, I think
Deputy Speaker.
I think it jumps into the responsiveness of the government to address some emergency measures and emergency relief. And I think a big part of it falls into reviving the confidence in the economy, if I were to put it that way. I've been telling a lot of people, the fact that I'm stuck in traffic jam, yes, it is bad for the environment, it is bad for my time management, but it is also good for the future of Guyana because it shows that people have confidence in the economy. And I think where the government picked up the economy from, and the stats are there from the Bank of Guyana as to what state they found it and how it is right now. I mean, I can't tell you the exact figure right now, but I will tell you it is nowhere near where they had found it in 2020. Now that confidence in the economy on a ground level, I feel very good about that. The fact that they're responsive enough to be able to provide the kind of relief for COVID, for flood relief, the $19,000 for every student and so on, that is very responsive considering where the country was just about a year and change ago. And considering that we're under COVID, we've just been flooded out, and I think the people were in urgent need of that relief, and many families still are. The unfortunate thing, I jump on board with Tim on this, the implementation, the execution of it in itself and how it is done needs a bit to be desired. If we're going to do anything that our tax dollars are responsible for, it has to come through a systemic approach, whereby we need to literally strengthen the public administration. Right now, in my view, there's still a deficiency in the public administration aspect of this country. For a minister to think, or ministers to think that they have to go down to the level to be seen and take photo, handing out checks and all those things, I think to a great extent, it shows how much we have not grown. By system, that should be done. And like Tim said, you show up at the post office and here's my ID and here we go. We all have a right to enjoy the bounties of this country, but we also have the right to not be victimized. Not just because I feel that I have a political party that I support, that I'm going to be taken advantage of just so you can take a picture with me and post it up. That would make me feel uncomfortable. Yes, if you want to say because we care, and I think to a great extent, if you care so much, build a structure so that every single Guyanese benefits. Don't build a structure just so that the political party benefits. And I think it is important that we understand the lack of public administration in how things are being done. For 1 year in administration, it was my anticipation that after we go through and would have dealt with elections, we developed a COVID management plan, we were hit by floods. So now at 1/5 of this tenure, I'm looking forward to whatever framework the government intends on putting. I know you have a manifesto, the government put forth a manifesto, but what I want to see is a framework to overhaul the public administration sector. How do we now go through, many of these institutions have standard operating procedures, but those standard operating procedures are sitting under a desk somewhere and no one even knows what it says. If I write to housing, or if I write to any institution or any government office, by virtue of my communication, there should be a defined response time of what must be contained in that response. I don't know if many people who applied to all of these government offices, if they are ever furnished with a response. If I have a house lot, or I applied for a house lot, or I applied for a pension or NIS and all these things, there must be a defined time limit. I know applying for housing, you get that notification electronically. But my dad, for example, served in the military, served in the GPM, chief of my community, worked for Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission, all of these things. And yet, you know, he's 74, going in 75, and yet to date, they cannot address his NIS. So basically, they're telling him, even though you served the country, and he defended Guyana on the Surinamese border and on the Venezuelan border. So even though you put your life on the line for this country, we cannot resolve your national insurance scheme contributions at this point. It shows once again that the system that was built does not hold water. It needs to be restructured. It needs to be revamped. And I'm still looking forward for that framework and how we are going to overhaul the delivery of public service. How does that administration come up? I'm yet to see a topic that neither side wants to look at, constitutional reform. We keep hearing, you know, we've got a committee in Parliament. The Parliamentary committee will not meet. And when they meet, I think it will just be kick the can down the road. So what I would like to see from the government is to develop a framework and say, look, people of Guyana, this is our framework. For one, we are going to schedule a meeting to meet with the leader of the opposition and other key stakeholders at such and such time. By the end of year 4, we want to have everything compiled and ready so that we could present it to the public, however you want to do it, but at least develop a framework so that the public can understand what process you intend on engaging to achieving some of these things. And I have not seen some of those as yet. I'm going to leave it there.
But was there any effort on your or anyone's part in approaching the government on the point you just raised? You see, if no one tells the government, then the government knows.
No, the government campaigned on constitutional reform, as did the opposition, and they keep campaigning on constitutional reform. But Vishnu, you have to remember my position, even as a deputy speaker, is given I don't have the kind of parliamentary latitude as the major opposition, nor as the government. Basically, if I want to speak on a bill, I have to go and ask to speak on a bill. They don't come to me and say, you know, Mr. Shuman or, you know, Lenox, you want to talk on this bill and stuff like that. I think it is only in the last sitting that Ganesh, the Honorable Ganesh Mahipal, who was acting chief whip at the time for the opposition, came up and said that. And Minister Teixeira also reached out to me to see how I'm going to, or if I wanted to speak on anything. But that little bit in there, it is a position that we have to continuously fight for. If not, basically we become a non-voice, a non-entity in the parliamentary structure. So to engage the government on constitutional reform, that is something that I hope that Tim and myself and TNM will sit down and draft out a way in how we are going to approach that. Because remember, I don't only represent the Liberty and Justice Party. I also represent in Parliament a new and united Guyana and the New Movement. So it is only fair that the three of us sit down and have that conversation how we're going to approach that topic.
Okay, with that, we'll take a break and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Travelspan Curry Duck Curry 2021 in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic was a massive success. Starting from Thursday into every night after, entertainers were on hand. Then came the Dominican-born Bollywood dancers that just awed the crowd. Many of our guests took day tours and visited the local market areas. Curry goat, curry, and bake and saltfish were among the tasty delights. Then came the big moment of the Curry Duck Curry competition. all guests were able to enjoy duck, and halal duck was also available for all Muslims. History was in the making with West Indian and Indian culture with Travelspan Curry Duck Curry. Let Travelspan arrange your flights, vacations, honeymoons, or cruises, and let allfromonesupplier.com deliver your duck, goat, and chicken, or all your West Indian items. On behalf of Travelspan, All From One Supplier, and sponsors, we wish to thank you for making this trip a memorable one. Get your meals delivered directly to your home. Order your curry duck curry, goat, or chicken, plus your dalpuri roti and basapshat from allfromonesupplier.com. We ship your meals directly to your home, so you can enjoy it upon arrival or refrigerate it and take it out when you're ready to eat. No more waiting in lines and no more losing time. Now you can treat yourself with a tasty curry and roti. You can also order solos, ices, pear jacks, coconut water, and much more from allfromonesupplier.com. It is free shipping to all U.S. states on all your curry duck curry, goat, and chicken, plus sodas and all West Indian items. So treat yourself or send a gift box of your favorite food, tasty pastries, sweets, and coconut water, or any West Indian item, products such as fish, meat, curry powders, pepper sauces, and much more from allfromonesupplier.com. Call today at 718-551-3292 or visit allfromonesupplier.com. Remember, it's free shipping throughout the U.S. Dave West Indian Products is the only distributor of 100% authentic West Indian products. Dave West Indian supplies fish, vegetables, curry, spices, sodas, and coconut water, plus ghees and much more straight from Guyana and the Caribbean. For all your shopping needs, visit Dave's Guyana Fish and Grocery Market. Dave West Indian products are also available in West Indian stores, Key Food, and allfromonesupplier.com. Dave West Indian has a full line of the most desirable products to fit all your needs. So visit Dave Guyana Fish and Grocery Market on 118th Street on Liberty Avenue, or in Maryland at 7505 New Hampshire Ave, or any West Indian stores, or allfromonesupplier.com. Dave West Indian, your 100% authentic West Indian product.
Viewers and listeners, I am your host, Vishnu Bisram. You are watching, listening to Globespan 24/7, owned and operated by Mr. Noor Singh, with technical operator Mr. Devin. With us this evening is Mr. Timothy Jonas, who's chair of ANUG, a new and united Guyana, the leader of the LJP, Liberal Justice Party, and is also deputy speaker, Mr. Shuman, and Dr. Vishnu Bandhu, who was with us on video, but unfortunately we lost video connection. But he is with us on speakerphone, and so he will make his contribution over the phone. So we were discussing, are discussing rather, an assessment or reassessment of the government's first year in office. Almost the entire half of the program so far has been spent on discussing some of the programs of the government, especially with regards to relief and COVID and so forth. And the general feeling is that the government has come up with some very good policy, but there are issues over implementation as related by all three of our guests this evening. So Mr. Shuman, before the break, raised the issue of constitutional reform. So could you just give us an update? Where do we stand with constitutional reform, since you are a sitting member of the parliament and the other two gentlemen are not?
That is a heavy question, and you're quite right. It is a topic that in my view, the government and the opposition are keen to skirt. I mean, both of them campaigned on constitutional reform. They both made serious commitments to the electorate prior to elections. And what we would like to see now is for them to make good on that commitment. There is a constitutional reform committee in Parliament comprising members of the major opposition. And we were, what I'd say, very strategically left off of that committee. We've been strategically left off of all parliamentary committees. So all of those committees are occupied by the major opposition, that's APNO AFC, and by the government side, I'd say the administration side, the People's Progressive Party, Civic. So we are not party to any of those discussions, any of the decisions being made. And even at a caucus level, I've never been invited to caucus with APNO AFC at any point. Even though we sit in the opposition benches, we are colleagues in the opposition. There has been no discussion nor invitation to sit down and find common ground on anything. So it's been a difficult, a bit of a difficult fight with them.
In your view, estimation, do you think the opposition is interested in some sort of constitutional reform?
Of course, every party
the official opposition.
Every party is interested in constitutional reform when they're out of office. But when they're in office, they're not interested in it. So I think it would be good for us to gauge the government's willingness. Like I opened earlier, is that this is 1 year, year one of 5 years. Even if we give them a buy on the entire year, I'm looking forward to the government putting forward some kind of a framework and how they intend on achieving some of these things. It's nice to say that I'm going to ensure that everyone shares the bounty of this country. But now what I want to see is not only how everyone's going to share it, but by what process are we going to share it. And part of that process, believe it or not, is constitutional reform. If we were to look at one of the things that IRI is present in Guyana doing, which is to engage stakeholders to provide technical support for electoral reform. Now, how do you get electoral reform without constitutional reform? You have to open the Constitution to be able to enter into this electoral process. I think there is also another issue that needs to be dealt with through constitutional reform, electoral reform, is electoral reform in Indigenous communities. We have an Amendment Act that gives the minister and the regional executive officer sole responsibility for those communities. And we all know that the administration appoints the REO, the regional executive officer, the sitting administration, that is. And the sitting administration also has the minister. So by virtue of that, what you're attempting to do is to control the Indigenous population of this country. So electoral reform has to be an all-encompassing exercise. It cannot only look at local government elections or national elections. It has to be electoral reform that touches all parts and all strata of the governance system in Guyana.
Dr. Bandhu, are you with us on the phone?
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, and so your viewpoint on constitutional electoral reform?
Well, that is something that the URP has been calling upon since 1992, when Carter advised how to set up the system. And when we see what's happening, we have been calling upon that. Even Cherry, we spoke to when he took office in 1992. And he promised us that they will two things the URP asked for, is the electoral reform and the law and order. And so he said, don't worry, Vishnu, don't worry, we can get this thing done. You know, he sits in office for 3 years and never even attempt to do it. And as Mr. Shuman said, everybody, when they're out of the seat, they want to have a constitutional reform. But when they get in the seat, they forgot about it because it's too sweet for them. Everything the president handle everything, do everything. He's the next God in our country. You know, and it's a very, very sad situation. And this alone tells you that these people who are sitting in the president's seat and their party, they don't have no no good intention for the people in Guyana. They're all about themselves. What they can do, what they can get for themselves, how they can fill their pockets, and how they can extract money from here and there. Many of our leaders, ministers, not had anything, not even a good shot in pants. After a couple of years, they're billionaires in this country because of the system. And we are still calling upon that. Let us see what this administration will do. They say they will change it. Let us see if they have the courage, they have the guts to do what they say they will do. I don't think they have the guts because I don't think they're honest enough. They're very dishonest from the top, come down.
Let's hear Mr. Jonas on this issue of constitutional reform, electoral reform.
Well, we identified two areas where I believe good decisions were made, if not well implemented, in terms of the fight against COVID and in terms of a decision that the wealth from revenue needs to disseminate quickly to the people who need it the most. If you want to speak of an area that there has not been any result, constitutional reform is that area. But the price, Lenox said it exactly right. It has been Lennox's position all along that because our system centralizes power with the government, so that once the government controls Parliament, they have everything. And I've said this so often, I'm tired of saying it. There is no incentive to the government to reform the Constitution so as to decentralize their own power. Someone as honest with the integrity of a Chedi Jagan did not do it. And we don't have anyone with the integrity of a Chedi Jagan right now on either side of Parliament. So if he didn't do it, I don't hold out much hope. For me, that will get done when there is discomfort in Parliament created by a third-party force that has the swing vote. Because if the government doesn't control Parliament, that will create enough discomfort that we can start having a talk. But right now, we have to look at the achievable targets. And an issue I would like to raise is infrastructure. You see, the government has been putting its hand in the business jar. And should not every foreign investor that needs a contract, every local businessman that needs a contract has to go hat in hand to the government and is terrified of antagonizing the government because they may lose contracts. So all of our businessmen, the entire private sector, is in the pocket of the government because they are terrified of being ostracized. And there are examples of ostracism. The government should not be directly involved in the award of those contracts. The government should be dealing with infrastructure. And let me say, the Ogle Highway that is now on the cards and is being planned and construction has begun is something that I give the government kudos for. It's been on the cards for a long time, but they are building it. It's a good idea. It will change things. It is well done. The improvement of the Demerara Bridge, I don't like how it was done. The engineers I've spoken to suggested different ways, but well and good. If we can have a 4-lane access across the Demerara River, it will be an improvement because the population is growing enormously on that side of the river and access needs to be easier. The Lethem Highway is a disgrace, the Lethem Trail, and has been a disgrace for the longest while. That should be a top priority because the trade from Brazil can potentially be so important and so valuable, and because that is the route through which our miners come, through which our timber come up to Georgetown, which is the seaport. That needs to be a priority, and I'm not hearing any discussion about it. Our government should be thinking about roads to Bartica to get over to Essequibo. Guyana should be a nation where there is a road network that you can get anywhere. I saw recently that the discussions have gone to building a bridge across the Quarantine River. That is well and good, and I congratulate the government on that. I don't see that as the priority. I would have preferred to see a road because what Suriname has to trade with us is not nearly as important, and we would not benefit nearly as much as access to Brazil and giving up Brazil access to our ports, to the Caribbean Sea and to the north. So we need to decide where our priorities are. If you go to the Essequibo and you look at the Pomeroon, you look at the agriculture development that can take place there, we need to be thinking about building ports, places of entry, so that you have shipping access from more than one port, not just Georgetown. We need to be building infrastructure, and I don't think that the government is focusing on infrastructure so much as trying to continue to centralize the power to award contracts, to have that power so that it controls the business community, and that is dangerous. If the government controls the business community, we do not have a democracy, even though we all went to vote. And that needs to reduce, it needs to be decentralized. I would like to urge the government, focus on infrastructure, build roads, let us be able to access the agricultural areas, the mining areas, the timber areas, and Brazil.
So the government has done well in COVID and in redistributing the wealth and resources, except how they have done it. The government is lagging in infrastructure development as well as in constitutional reform. Any other areas where the government has not done well or has done quite well in the estimation or in the view of these three esteemed gentlemen? Dr. Bandhu, any area where you felt the government has done quite well?
Well, I think in the educational section that instead of thinking about spending these billions of dollars in school, and then we are not having school, we don't know how long this COVID will last, when children will go to school, if it's a year, 2 years, 3 years, or whatsoever. Why are we spending all this money in building schools when there are no schools nowhere? Why don't we the government should take the money and set up in each home that has children, computer and a desktop, and they can able to study through the internet by the teachers. I think instead of spending the money in schools, we should try to furnish people their home with computers, children, and desktop tables, so that they can able to study. You know, right now many people children doesn't have computers. Few of them who have can be able to log into things. But the same billions of dollars we're spending outside, let us spend it wisely in each home in this country that has children to study, and furnish them with a computer, with a Wi-Fi for the computer, and let them get on with their study. I think that's a very important thing at this time.
Okay. Any other areas that you feel that they have lagged in?
Well, there are a lot of areas in our bidding system in Guyana. Many times that we are doing bidding, they set up a board, you know, to qualify people who are qualified for those jobs are not getting it. Sometimes it goes to cabinet and cabinet passed it. You know, I don't know if you read the last, some time ago, an issue with some contractor won a bid to put on these palaf on the riverside, and they take it and give one of their friends, which they spend $40 million more. And this friends, one of the government people was living in the man home. So they you know, and this is how things go. In most of the area in our country, all these boards, if you check all the boards in Ghana, we have a lot of corruption. I am in one of these boards, the board, and I can tell you what happened. You know, everybody, government put their own people as chairman to head these boards. The board sometimes doesn't even know what is happening. People are fired, people are hired, and the board doesn't know of it. The chairman does it. And that's how we keep on going. You know, people have been dismissed wrongfully in this country. You know, and we keep on doing. We said we are cleaning up the act of the thieves and all these things. But you check the record since the year that we took over, right? How much money these boards make, especially Guyana. How much money we made. We lost money. Check the history will show you that. Now you put in correct people, but you still are losing heavily. You can't make the money that you ought to make. You know? And you know what I have seen in this country, when you do wrong things and you are the government friends and the president friends and so forth, you know, you get promotion. When you do the right thing, you get demotion. You know, and that's how it works in our country here. The system hasn't changed. I have been always saying this. We are only exchange of hands in Guyana. Nothing changed. The same system. Many of the old crooks in the last PPP regime, they bring them back again. You know, look right now. You have people who are very comfortable in a place called Hampton Court. They have a fish cooker there. They just remove a man who was doing an excellent job, and the two bandits they brought back, who was there previously and removed, they brought them back there. You know, to drink from all day and do nothing. And that's how the system works in the country. You can't say nothing.
I don't know if government brings back people to drink rum, but perhaps the member of parliament can address that issue for us.
I am not saying the government bring them back to drink rum, but I'm telling you what they are doing. You know, people are very uncomfortable at the fish area, fishing industry in that area right now.
Mr. Jonas, any other areas that you felt government lagged behind or performed exceedingly well?
I think given that the country is so divided, it could have been a priority to try to reach out, but that has difficulties in itself, because I personally have seen from the comments of the opposition, the tone of the opposition, that they are not that being said, as difficult as the opposition clearly is being, if you want to lead for the whole country, you need to lead for the whole country. And you need to keep making the effort. You cannot run this country just representing half the people and say to your half of the people who support you anyway, those people are terrible people, we ignore them. Because those people represent half of the country. Either we're a country or we're not. Either we are one people. And if you are going to lead the nation, set the example and lead the nation. The truth is, Vishnu, that there's so much to do that it is hard to criticize after 1 year for not doing small things. I've seen small things that have been done that were good. I saw a move to allow pensioners, rather than require them to go and line up at the post office every month, you see a horrible sight of elderly, infirm, tired people lining up at the post office. We've seen that for years. Now there's a procedure. Some of them, if they have a bank account, they can have the money directly transferred. There are little ways to ameliorate the lives of the people, the ordinary people. That's where we got to start. But in the medium term, I would like a culture and a business environment that encourages investment and encourages foreign investment as well as local investment. That's not happening. And I hope, I don't say this as a criticism because it's only been a year, but I would like to see in the next year that the difficulty of doing business in Guyana eases. I would like to see a simpler way to deal with transactions. To give you an example, I'd like to see tax reform so that you're not giving tax exemptions to your favorites. There needs to be a transparent system and a fair tax structure that everybody operates on an equal playing field. I up seeing politicians driving around in Land Cruisers that no other Guyanese can afford because they don't pay tax for it, which in my mind makes them a parasite on the country because they have not contributed. I would immediately say in Parliament, no parliamentarian must get any tax exemption because they are the ones who pass the tax laws, and they can't pass a tax law to make me pay tax themselves from that same tax law. That is absurd. So there need to be changes like that. And one that an alert I want to sound. We have nearly 50,000 Venezuelans in this. We have Trinidadians coming in. We've had Brazilians here. We welcome all of them. That being said, we have to arrange our immigration system, our citizenship policy, and our to ensure that they are here for the benefit of Guyana and not here to take a benefit from Guyana. It can't be a one-way street to them. None of them are coming here. And I don't say this as a criticism because you live to profit and the capitalist way is to profit. They come here to earn money, and that is good. Power to them. But in coming, we must ensure that our tax regime, our immigration policies, and our citizenship policies mean that they are contributing, and the businesses that they bring employ Guyanese, raise Guyanese up, train Guyanese. Our government has to work in education. We have to specialize the University of Guyana, which is an institution that is out of touch with our society and its needs. It needs to be geared more to agriculture. It needs to be geared more to civil engineering, to deal with CD. The University of Guyana needs to consider education specific for our police force, to make our police so that there is a system of encouraging police to be educated, teachers to be educated, so that the necessary professions in our society become more professional. And we need to gear our various institutions to the specific needs. NARI is an institution that is created and designed to help the agriculture industry. It doesn't. If you go to NARI now and you say, I need 1,000 cherry plants, NARI will tell you they got 6. And the idea is there, the implementation is not. So systems that people can lift themselves up. The most important one, where I will criticize the government, is crime. Vishnu, Guyana has become a place where you walk on the road at night at your peril. You go into Starbucks Market, hugging your pocket, ladies,
sometimes in the day as well.
Inevitably, you hear about pickpockets, you hear about choke and rob, you hear about people running on the seawall, getting attacked by folks with knives. You hear about robberies, the gold place that was robbed in Kitty, the supermarkets that now have armed guards outside. We are in a dangerous situation, and there are a number of reasons for it.
All right, so Mr. Jonas seems to have frozen.
And if he is able-bodied, are you hearing me, Vishnu?
Yeah. Go ahead now. Yeah, we're hearing you now.
If that youngster is able-bodied, he might become a miner, he might go and in the timber industry, or he might stay here and steal. He might go on the river and be a pirate. You have to give people an opportunity to be good and useful citizens. If you don't, it's inevitable. We've got to allow parents to raise their children. You cannot have a system where you have 4 good schools and then all the other schools are hopeless. I would implement a rule that a teacher in a public school may not give lessons. If you teach, that is a full-time job, and if you're giving lessons, you are acting in a conflict with what you should be doing in the school. And for me, a teacher in a public school should not be able to do your job in the school. But on the flip side, you got to pay your teachers 3 times what you're paying them now. You got to pay your police 3 times what you're paying them now. So In the medium term, we need to create employment opportunities. We need to raise the income and the standard of living of the employees that we have. As we get foreign investment, we need to shrink our public service because our public service is over. There are too many people there not doing enough work. They're all underemployed. And if we can gradually make those changes, crime will reduce. The reason that people are migrating from Guyana now is crime. People are afraid where they can sit on their. We will come up there, but steps need to be taken.
Let's hear from Deputy Speaker Shuman now.
Thank you. I think Tim dug into quite a few things that I think are, I'd say a little bit too heavy for me to lift into right now, because I wanted to take a look at some of the things that I look forward to. And Tim is quite right, and it's only been a year. I mean, I said that before. We are 1/5 of the way through a 5-year administration, and I'm looking forward to the framework that the government hopefully will build. I think if there is one thing that we should do is to remove the duty concession on vehicles, or maybe change the duty structure and make it more on par with what you see in the developed world, so that we don't end up getting all of these used cars and cars that have been flooded out and not fit for use in other countries coming to Guyana. We're going to be inundated with outdated technology. I am looking forward to what I would say an inclusive economic structure. If you look at dollar for dollar, what the government has spent on the delivery of public service, you will find, and I have not done the analysis yet, but I'm sure it's up in the hundreds to one, that you would spend on a person on the coast compared to someone in the hinterland. And that is through service delivery. If I want a passport, I'd have to go to one of these major hubs or come to Georgetown. If I want to attend court, I'd have to go to one of these major hubs or come to Georgetown. If I want to buy a car, I can only drive it on the coast or in Latham or in one of these major hubs. If I want to farm, I cannot farm for commercial purposes in my community because I have no access to market. If I want to participate in the development of infrastructure, if I want to bid on projects, I cannot bid on them because I don't have the requisite equipment in my community to be able to mobilize and come out. So what I would like to see is a framework for the equitable development of the economy, the equitable development of infrastructure, spatial development, and for the equitable delivery of public service. Indigenous peoples pay taxes also, but we cannot continue to see this disparity in spending. If you look at it, yes, you've got a tremendous amount of the population in Region 4. You're currently in the process of completing the Mandel Avenue at how many billions? You're going to go and spend road on the Ogle to Eccles and then Eccles to Timeri. I understand that some of those things are vital for the economic development, but just in naming those 3 roads in themselves has outstripped what every government has spent for time immemorial in those hinterland communities. You can't say that you've given them equitable opportunities in those communities. So what I'm looking for in the next 4 years is for the government to start taking a look at how they could develop this framework and implement it so that the Indigenous population is not left behind. We have gone through 1 year of the administration's time in office. I had previously attempted to inquire on the status of the Amerindian land titling program, and there has been no update. My understanding is that there hasn't been a single one issued, and you've been in for 1 year in office. So I'm hopeful that they could rectify that, or at least communicate it to the public, let us know how they intend on deconflicting those areas and how they intend on addressing titling of Indigenous communities. One of the interesting thing, and once again, I go back to this because it is a truism. There has not been a single indigenous community in this country, and I don't even think in Brazil, Venezuela, Suriname, French Guiana, or any of the Americas, that have ceded a single inch of their territory to any colonizer. And that's a matter of history. We've never ceded. In fact, when the Dutch were here, they actually had to sign peace treaties with us because it was war after war after war when they tried to enslave indigenous peoples. So considering that we've never ceded any of our territory to anyone, why is it now that I have to go and ask for my land that, that has been my family for time immemorial? I think it is somewhat of an interesting system that is meant to maybe manipulate the people. I don't know if they want to bring it into the legal framework of the country in terms of the Lands Act. But whichever way, the process needs to be accelerated. I hope that they could provide a framework that can be communicated to the people very clearly. And next month marks a very important month for us, the Amerindian Heritage Month, or Indigenous Peoples Heritage Month in Guyana. Tushals were elected in May and June, and there has not been a convene of the National Tushals Council as yet. I am made to understand from some of my friends in those communities that the government intends on having regional meetings to convene regional meetings to elect various members of the executive. I think that is, while it is prudent to ensure that the Tushals are kept at arm's length away from COVID, I'm also slightly apprehensive that they are going to be flying a series of government officials into these meetings and trying to sway what the NTC has grown into over the previous 5 years. I can't say much about what they did in the last 2 or 3 years, but I would say that there is some concern at a very organic level, at a community level, that the NTC may regress. And we are cautiously watching that, and we're hopeful that that is not the direction that that it's going to go, and that the NTC continues to grow and to become that representative body. So I'm still, like I said, looking forward to that. The business component of Guyana, you see a lot of activities on the coast. Food processing plant here, food processing plant there, asphalt plant, everything. But I'm yet to see how indigenous communities are going to tie into some of these things. Why have we not seen a food processing plant in a place like Baramita? Why have we not seen one in a place like St. Ignatius? I'm hopeful that there is a framework that exists, but once again, we're at year 1, and I'm very interested to see what the government has planned along those lines for those communities, because we can't simply become a welfare state and call that development. A welfare state is a welfare state. Development is about resources and people, and we have to find a way to ensure that the people develop in tandem with the economy and with the resources.
And these are issues we all hope that you are going to raise in Parliament, and hopefully they will be addressed.
Well, I do what I can, and I will say to the extent that I have that voice, trying to carve out a space in Parliament to address some of these issues. Take, for example, if I wanted to table a private member's bill in Parliament, you have so many bills that are still waiting from 2-3 sittings ago that are yet to be tabled or yet to be heard. And there will always be ways within which our colleagues in the opposition will not want to give us the floor, because if we start to speak, it creates a problem for them. For Opposition Day, for example, if they have 15 bills and we want to get on there, they may push us all the way down to another sitting in another year. So it is something that we have to be very cautious and careful how we navigate it. And at a time convenient to Mr. Ramkaran and Tim, we are going to sit down and figure out how we could navigate the parliamentary process a bit better to be more effective if we can. I'm sure that Ralph, having that tremendous knowledge of being not only a senior counsel, but also the previous Speaker of the National Assembly, could provide some very strategic guidance on that.
So we only got about 3 minutes left. So, Mr. Bandhu, you have any final thoughts, comments on tonight's session?
Yeah, well, all what I would like to say that, the government had promised a lot of things, like, for instance, fuel reduction of 50%. It going up 50% instead of coming down. Cost of living, every item in the supermarket going down, going up instead of down. Pensioners, the money that they promised pensioners, they give them not even a quarter of it. Right? We have the old saying, the old people said, what you can see high daytime, you don't need a lamp to see it nighttime.
But Doc, there was an increase in the pension, and this is a 5-year program, so hopefully they will be able to honor their promise and commitment over the next 4 years.
On the campaign, that wasn't it. They said about 40 or 50,000, if I can recall clearly. And now then they give the 4 or 5 to the pensioner. They said now it will be spread out in the 5 years. Anyway, I doubt that will happen, but let's see. I disagree with my 2 colleagues here saying that it's too early to tell. It's not too early to tell. We can see the direction where they're going, and we know what is going to happen. So you can't wait on 4 or 5 years to say, let's see what they're doing. There's only promises from these people all the time. The government only keep on promises. I'm not saying everything they do is wrong, but many things they do is wrong. They do more wrong than right.
So you would like to see greater deliveries?
Yes, I would like to see it come. What they promise, it must come through. You don't lie to people, keep on lying, and every election they do this to the people.
Okay, we got a minute left, so let's get Timothy Jonas and then the Deputy Speaker.
There is a wonderful opportunity over the next 2 years for the government to implement what are obvious and clear policies to everybody. This isn't rocket science. There isn't a Guyanese who would not recognize a good policy. The need for a fair tax system, the need to arrange for easy business in Guyana, the need to encourage foreign investment. The policies are easy. The government needs to show that they are implementing them in a transparent and inclusive way, and they have a wonderful opportunity to do that. Our credit is high, we have access to money, that is how billions of dollars can be handed out. We need to show that we're building our infrastructure, we need to show we're friendly to foreign investors, and we need to show we're creating employment and improving health and education at the same time. This is an opportunity that needs to be grasped, and the people in government can leave a legacy that they are proud of, or they can try to retain power, centralize power, control everything and fail, because they failed when they tried to do that 7 years ago. So I hope that we see a decentralization, more transparency, more inclusivity. If we don't, we will be back to the same.
Yes, Deputy Speaker Shuman, any final comments?
I want to say thanks to Nohar, yourself, and my colleagues for participating today, and thanks to the viewers for watching. I think in the first year here, the government has done quite a bit to first correct the course, correct the trajectory that we were on. And it is now for us to look and see how they intend on moving forward. I think I am hopeful that they are going to provide the framework for how they intend on moving forward. Don't just tell me you're going to move forward. I want to see the framework and how it's going to be done. And I think the people of Guyana, they're owed that. At the end of the day, it is our money that's being spent. and I would like to see under what process it is being spent. Yes, I'm in Parliament. Yes, we pass budget, but all that comes up is a budget line. It does not give the definition for what the name of that program will be, who will be distributing it, or anything of that sort. I think a little bit more transparency would be good, but I want to see the development of systems in how we address these deficiencies.
Dr. Vishnu, Bandhu, any recommendations to the government that you would like to see?
Well, I would like for them to keep their promises. That's all my recommendation. If they keep their promises, it's all well and good. We will see some different, but so far there's no promises that have been kept. You know, I'd like to thank you for moderating this program. I'd like to thank Nohar and Devin and all of you for giving us the opportunity to be on here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let me again thank the viewers for spending their evening with us tonight, August 25th, I think it is. And I want to thank the Deputy Speaker and leader of the LJP, Mr. Lenox Shuman, Dr. Vishnu Bandhu, leader of the United Republican Party, Mr. Timothy Jonas, chairperson of ANUG, and Senior Counsel. Thank you so much, sirs, for spending your evening, or I should say an hour and a half with us this evening. And let us thank Noor Singh for producing this wonderful program. Mr. Devin also for being technical host. Thank you all, gentlemen. Have a pleasant evening, and we'll see each other again soon.